Welcome to the Edgevana Podcast, where we illuminate subjects in the IT infrastructure space. Get ready to hear some amazing insights from outstanding individuals that will change the way you think about IT. And now, here's your host, Mark Thiele.
Welcome to another edition of the Edgevana Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Rick from AIG. And Rick is an amazing character on a number of levels. And sadly, we only have half an hour. So I have asked him to take one half of his extremely interesting career path and life path and leave it maybe for a future podcast. And today we're going to focus on his getting to where he is and the complexities of managing large scale infrastructure for a large company. With the complexities that are thrown on our shoulders by everything from cloud to considering of edge computing to the impact of the pandemic, et cetera, et cetera. So Rick, welcome to the show. Great to have you.
Thanks, Mark. I appreciate it. Look forward to it. And I'm ready to go. Ask away. Whatever questions
Awesome.
you have, I will answer them to the best of my ability.
Well, give us a quick rundown on Rick. You know, what's your current job and what's your scope of responsibilities at AIG?
Rick Collins. I am global head of data center operations. I manage primarily our 8 enterprise data centers globally, 2 in Japan, 2 in the UK, 1 in Malaysia, 1 in Singapore, and 2 in the US. And then we have some RNAPs, remote network access points to the cloud that we also manage, 1 in each region. And then we have some smaller sites that we support as well for different businesses, or what we would also call NIEs, non-integrated businesses, things we've purchased, but we haven't integrated them into our infrastructure at this point in time. So that's our responsibility. We also manage and design MDF and IDFs in our business offices as well.
Excellent. And Rick, you know, so your description of your environment, you know, and I mean, you and I know each other a little bit, and I know a little bit about what you do, but for the gratification and education of the audience, giving them a little bit more of your background, I think is important to the rest of our discussion. And it's pretty close to being the definition of the complexity that customers are having to worry about, enterprise environments are having to worry about these days. You know, so when I and admittedly, you know, I haven't done your job even at a smaller scale for several years now. But if I were in your spot, I'd be thinking about all the issues of how much am I going to end up with in the public cloud? How much should I save my quote unquote internal manufacturing capacity? You know, what's likely to end up being hybrid, and how much of that would be on partner premises versus on my premises? What's the impact of a more distributed workforce? Is that more of a problem for AIG or less of a problem? I mean, and I could go on and on. There are a number of issues that rack this particular category of technology management and ownership these days. Tell us a little bit about, you know, what are some of the things that you're fighting through right now, and how are you handling them?
Well, you know, and fighting through is kind of a different way of putting it, but let's you know, being an insurance company and being risk adverse, we've always been robust in anything we build. So when all of a sudden last March we made the decision, of course, AIG's always had the policy where you can work from away. Right. So they would let people work from home, or if they had to travel or whatever, they could work from there. So we've always had a robust VPN. And particularly on Fridays and the weekends, it was a lot bigger than it was Monday. People were using it more than they were Monday through Thursday. So when our CEO made the decision that we would all work from home, you know, all of a sudden we had 50,000 people on our VPN. And that's not everybody works from home.
Right.
Being that I manage data centers and we have to show up to install servers, new switches, cabling, we come in. So we are designated critical or essential employees. So we
Right.
come into the office every day. Um, we had about 2 weeks of kind of rough going when we decided to have everybody work from home. But once we expanded a few pipes, it's been working beautifully. And every time we have a town hall meeting with our CEO and executive leadership, they are very complimentary of the amount of work and productivity that they see from us on a daily basis. So we are still getting the job done. And we have a very secure VPN, and we're using the heck out of it. As a matter of fact, it has worked so well. The company as a whole is looking at their real estate footprint to see, can we downsize?
Right.
We had been thinking about doing certain things and relocating certain businesses or doing this, that, and the other. So now all of a sudden, instead of looking for a building that'll house 250 people every day, do we really only need a building that may handle 50? Because our senior management has made the decision, and I think it's a wise one, that currently, until for the foreseeable future, when we do open our offices back, and we do have dates planned, for later this year, it will be voluntary. No one's going to force anybody to come in. Now, there is a lot of pent up energy from people to come into the office, and there's a lot of people that don't want to come into the office. So we don't know yet what our real estate footprint's going to need to be for the future, but that's something that working from home has made us all reevaluate. And not only us, all the companies are,
Right.
they're either being extremely successful in working from home or they're not. And those that are successful are sitting there going, why do I need to worry about, brick and mortar and putting a new roof on the building or putting new tile, having cleaning crews? They're all looking at this going, maybe there's a different way of doing business now than we had anticipated. I like that watch, though, by the way.
So. Oh, thank you. Oh, beautiful. Beautiful. Nice.
I think we have the same taste in watches.
It seems. Yes,
yeah.
sir.
Yeah. So, we didn't have any problem, working from home. The second thing is going back to, we had started this before the pandemic hit, but we are doing a app rationalization and app modernization routine, determining what we can put in the cloud, what needs to be modernized so it can go to the cloud, and that we want to keep on-prem. And why do we want to keep it on-prem and all this kind of stuff? So we are in the process, and we have been for a couple of years, in doing that app rationalization and modernization. And we have some goals around, retiring some apps, modernizing them and going forward. So we were a little further down that path until the pandemic hit. And then it was, well, wait a minute, what about our footprints, all this other kind of stuff? So we have looked at multiple cloud providers. We have instances with Azure today, and we have instances with AWS right now. And we are expanding those as we go. But before we had looked at, okay, everything's going to AWS. Then we pulled back and said, we need to put things where they rightfully belong. It's going to perform better with Azure or Oracle or whoever. That's where it needs to go. So we, instead of being extremely focused, we're looking at where is the best fit. And along with that is it best fit in public or on our own private cloud? So we have our own private cloud that we've developed as well.
Nice. So I'm just saying, I don't know if you realize this, but your popularity rating just went up like 17 points because you didn't say it out loud, but you indicated multi-cloud, and multi-cloud is all the rage these days. ironically, pretty much everyone's doing multi-cloud, whether they acknowledged it or not. But still,
well, I look at it this way.
Yeah.
I've always been kind of a pragmatic kind of individual, and I've never found that a uh, one type fits all works best. If you're running a business and you're providing a service to customer, you have to tailor how your operations will best serve your customers,
Right.
and how you'll best be able to serve your own employees. So if that means, we have to put some things in Oracle and some things in Azure and some things in AWS, we're going to do it.
Yeah, and
that's what we do.
no, and I appreciate that. I feel much the same way. In fact, I want to ask you sort of a peripheral question on that, and say, in a couple of blogs and or podcasts that I've done in the last 3-4 months, I've talked a little bit about what I call best fit IT.
Yep.
And you're effectively describing best fit IT, right? You're finding what works best and applying it to the appropriate problems to get the most value for your customers and for yourself. Do you see that as reducing complexity or adding complexity to your role?
I look at it this way: if you're putting something where it is the best fit, it's going to reduce complexity.
Right.
Trying to fit something that is better suited for Azure into AWS just doesn't make sense. Trying to take an Oracle stack and put it in Azure or AWS doesn't make sense. So we do have Oracle Cloud. We are using it today. And we're also in this app rationalization and modernization. We're looking at, okay, do we need to run it on-prem, or do they have an as a service that we can go to? For example, we ran ServiceNow in-house for years.
Yeah.
And then 3 years ago, we said that doesn't make sense. Let's run it in the cloud. And when I was purchasing a new DCIM tool, one of the things I had to look at was, do I want to run it in-house or do I want to run it in the cloud? So we bought a cloud version of that, and that's kind of where we're going. So, and it's on their cloud. It's not on my cloud. It's not on AWS. It's their cloud, not mine.
Yeah.
So, that's the smartest thing to do. And I think if you, it's sort of like if you've got a diesel car or truck, you don't want to put gas in it. So you want to put good diesel fuel. So we are putting our applications where we're testing, where they will function the best for us and our clients.
Are you saying a Ford or a Chevy could equally be good if they were used appropriately?
Well, since I have owned, I've owned one Chevy in my life, but most people don't classify it as a Chevy because it was a Corvette.
Oh, okay.
So, everybody goes, Corvette's really not a Chevy.
Doesn't count. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't count. So, I haven't owned Chevys, but I have owned GM products. So.
All right. So you have a big footprint, right? And is distributed globally. Do you see that footprint as likely expanding or contracting, or staying the same over the next 3 to 5 years?
Contracting. Over the last 2 years globally, I have created white space within my data center to the tune of 39,000 square feet.
Wow.
New white space, and that's come several ways. One is new technology, smaller boxes. Plus, I decided to go to relatively high density power, whereas before they were going 8 to 12 kW per rack. I'm putting 22 kW in a rack and using 17.2.
Nice.
So, in many cases now we're able to get 33 to 34 servers in a rack with 5 top of rack switches.
Yeah.
And, that reduces space right there. Plus, we've been getting rid of tech debt as well, and going to, a more modernized storage platform, which also shrank its footprint as well. So modernization in our technology or our servers has increased that. Plus, moving some things to the cloud has already done that, and yeah, that's where we are. Plus, high density power has really helped us because we went through a process of going through our data centers and saying, okay, and calling the users saying, can we decommission this?
Yep.
This server's 6 years old, it's got to go. And we get a lot, let's convert it to VM, let's do whatever we need to do. But then, we found a lot of people that had left stuff behind as well. So
Yep.
we pulled that and got rid of it. So we created a life cycle starting at one end of the data center, just working ourselves through the racks of what we can decommission and get rid of or convert. And then anything that's left behind, we would try to move to a better place where we can utilize our U footprint better.
Yeah,
So we
I think it's underappreciated in general in the industry still. Two things about from the many points you just made, I think that are underappreciated. One of them is the opportunity associated with using higher density power. I mean, if you think about a lot of the workloads, and maybe that was part of what drove you to make those decisions beyond just white space availability, is that more and more of our workloads are very, very data-centric, right? The number of servers in a data center as compared to the number of disk arrays has changed from servers to disk arrays to disk arrays to servers over the course of the last 5 or 6 years, right? And as a result, the amount of compute required in those server racks has gone up. And the closer you can get that to storage, the better, right?
Exactly.
And so,
exactly. And before we took over these data centers, I took over the data centers in 2016 with AIG. They would actually, we would find 9 hops from a server being installed before it got to the MDF, the core switch. And they would hop, they would put 3 or 4 IDFs in one row and then hop it all over the place. And I just said, oh, hell no, this isn't going to work. And we started tearing that stuff out. And
right.
I understood after that why some of our clients were complaining about latency.
Yeah.
Hell, if I've got 9 hops from a 6-year-old server to an MDF and a core switch, that's just not going to work. So we've gotten that down to where in many cases, we've got 1 or 2 hops and that's about it.
Right. It's ironic. I work a lot on edge computing now, as you know, from probably our previous conversations. And latency is almost always one of the first points of contention. And it's interesting how many people don't recognize the amount of latency that can be in a combination of infrastructure design and app design and technology architecture in general. Notwithstanding the distance between the user and the actual application.
Well, and we also decided at the same time we went with high density that I'm going to use twin-ax inside the rack, twin-ax cable inside the rack. Outside is all fiber.
Yeah.
So that has helped too. And then it's just. Yeah.
So in looking at an environment like yours, there has to be at least a handful of words of wisdoms that you'd want to share with somebody else, or you'd be willing to share with somebody else that's going through this same kind of transformation, for lack of a better description. And in fact, using that word transformation, I'd love to talk about that a little bit as well. If you had to give the audience with large data center footprint, or somebody that helps people that have a large data center footprint in today's times, what would you do to help them consider the best ways to rationalize and move forward?
Well, I look at it this way. First thing you have to do is you got to know your fleet. You got to know what you have, which means you have to have a good DCIM tool. And there's a lot out there. I'm not mentioning the one I've got just because there's a lot of good ones out there. Second thing is you need to use it in such a way that anyone can understand it, which means you also have to put in all of your patching schedules.
Yep.
All of them. So if you know all that, and you get a good DCIM tool, you're going to know how you can move things around. You can plan out what you want to do and then do it in a timely manner. And at the same time, you can preset any migration you want to do,
Yep.
because then you spend hours before the migration getting things ready, and then when you want to move something, it's just unracking it, racking it back, and plugging in all your pre-labeled cables right in there. So the second thing is know your clients too. You have to be able to contact that business server, the owner of that server, and say, and understand what it's for and what it's doing. So, know your fleet, know your customer is the best way to do it, because even though I am AIG, basically anybody that has a server or a switch or a disk array or an appliance in my data center is a customer of mine.
Yep.
All of AIG is my customer, and that's the way I look at it. And I try to be as open and willing and, to anything they need under the proper change management. That's the other thing.
Right.
Proper change management is key to being successful. When we took over the data centers in 2016, they were only meeting their SLAs 16% of the time.
Ouch.
Yeah.
So basically, if you'd let them continue until 2040, they would be up to 40% of the time. Right?
I'm not sure. The people I replaced believed in when they got a piece of gear in, they took it straight back to the storage area and let it sit there for 30 days before they tried to install it. And, one of the things I'm extremely grateful for is I work for a company called ACS, Affiliated Computer Services,
Yep.
owned by Darwin Decent. And one thing about ACS, they would let you get involved in anything you wanted to get involved in. So if there was something going on and you really wanted to be part of the project, the more the merrier.
Yep.
I learned so much from that experience, and from always providing the best possible service to your customers.
Yep.
So that when I do have equipment coming in, I've already got it planned out. I know where it's going 9 times out of 10. I've already got the cables run. I know where the switches are, or I'm installing the switches are already there. So we take it right off of the dock when it's being delivered, straight into the data center, let it acclimate for a couple hours, and then we start installing it right then or
Nice.
that night.
Nice.
So that's just kind of the way we've always been. I've never been one for sit down there and let me get after it 2 weeks. If it's coming in, we try to take care of it today.
Yeah. Only makes sense, because you never know. I mean, you put something off in the data center for a week, and then something, a problem occurs, and then all of a sudden a week turns into a month.
Yeah, that's why we started interjecting ourselves into all the project planning meetings, even though we may be a fly on the wall, or it is a pain in the ass to sit through some of those let's watch the paint dry meetings. We're there, we know what's coming, we can prepare for it, so when the stuff does hit the floor, if it's critical, I can have it ready. I can have it up and ready in hours.
Nice. So we're already coming to the end of our half hour, Rick, and I really enjoyed the conversation. I want to ask you one more question before we wrap up. A lot of, to me, and I apologize if I put words in AIG's mouth or in your mouth, but to me, a lot of what you've described as your preparation work, your philosophy, or your best fit IT, lend themselves to a company, if not to Rick Collins specifically, that is recognizing the opportunity associated with digital transformation. What can you tell us about the royal of your and AIG's efforts relative to transformation?
Well, a couple of years ago, we started down a path of trying to transform the company from a more traditional paper-based company to an electronic-based company, to where everything is online. And we're also looking at it as from a standpoint of how many steps does it take something to to get entered. We found that in one of our business units, it was taking like 5 or 6 applications people would have to close and bring up to enter some work.
Wow.
So we fixed that to where
Yeah.
we created something that you type it in one place and it sends it where it needs to go.
Yep.
So we've been doing that for several years now. AIG's really been on the cutting edge of trying to modernize itself more so than a lot of the insurance companies. You know, we've got some history some people don't like from the financial crisis, but the company has come out much stronger and much more lean than it was, and able to move much quicker than it has in the past. We can get things done in days, and some people can't.
Right.
And it's a testament. I went back to ACS one time. I spent 10 years there, and I started my own business and then sold it. And then when ACS asked me to come back and help them with something, and when I was there before, I could get something done in half a day or less. And that was, like one of the things I was responsible for was statement mailing. This goes back to the 90s, mailing out statements. So we had to have massive amounts of postage, right? Printing and mailing statements.
Yep.
I could get postage checks cut in half a day. Well, when I went back 7 years later, to get one copy of Microsoft Office Suite took 42 pages and a senior vice president sign off to get that from an enterprise agreement we already had with Microsoft. We just had to take it off the shelf and plug it in. So they weren't, they had gone the opposite, and AIG has really gotten much more streamlined and efficient in what it does.
Yeah.
And we will continue to improve that year after year over the next 2 years dramatically.
Well, that's awesome. That's awesome. So two things. One is, so basically what you're saying is that they were paying double whatever the license cost per person was because of the effort involved in just giving somebody a license. And two, you guys have helped position AIG to be more successful. I have to assume that, like any financial company, the ability to provide more personalized products and more instant on services, even incorporating and deploying acquisitions from around the globe and adding them to your portfolio more effortlessly, are all things that transformation have got to be key for, right?
Yeah, not only the internal, but letting our salespeople take their iPad out and make demonstrations to people are things that we've all done over the last few years that we didn't have before. So it's developing mobile apps and all that kind of stuff. So I mean, we're not 100% where we want to be yet, but we are getting there as quick as anybody can. So
that's awesome. Well, Rick, it's as always. I mean, we should have conversations more often just for the fun of it. But
there you go, Mark.
Yeah, I mean, why not, right? It doesn't always have to be work. I really appreciate you taking the time. This has been a great story, and I think that listeners can take something away from the fact that if a company as large and complex as AIG in multiple geographies and with as many employees as you have can make these kinds of changes in their journey to be a transformed or a transforming company, I don't think the journey's ever done per se.
No.
Right?
No, not at all. Not at all. And, we're trying to get to the cloud. We're going to shrink data centers, but guess what? As we grow, they're going to start growing back a little bit. So, it's, like you said, it's transforming.
Yeah.
It's always present tense.
Awesome. Well, Rick, it's been a real pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Edgevana Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast listening app or on YouTube. To learn more, visit www.edgevana.com. Thanks for listening, and be sure to join us on our next episode.